Hello Galaxy, I'm Chris Pirillo, and I'm recording this video on my LG V30 to test the camera, but not do one of those artificial camera tests or comparisons that, quite honestly, very few people pay attention to. Or, of course, when they see the results, they tend to favor the camera that they want to favor. No, instead of doing that, I just thought I'd demonstrate by recording a video, talking about a topic that I've not really talked about in a while, just reminiscent of my early days in the Android world, or swimming with Android experiences, talking about my first Android device. If you want to talk about your first Android device, knock yourself out. You may even still have your first Android device. I do not. I did not like my first Android device. I don't even think I liked my second or third or fourth one. But I've tried Android over the years, certainly. It began, if I remember correctly, with the HTC Evo 4G. I was told back then by everybody around me, and by everybody I mean at least two people. It's not that I have a lot of people around me in general. I was told that the HTC Evo 4G was an iPhone killer. Now, keep in mind, this was at a time that iOS was not as bad as it is today. We've kind of regressed. In many ways, Android has traded places with iOS in terms of performance that's palpable, that you can see, that you can experience firsthand. I did a video that's probably still around of my first boot into the HTC Evo 4G, and I didn't like it. I shared my opinion. I didn't like it. And of course, that seemed to bring everybody who should have stayed in the woodwork out of the woodwork to slag me for obvious problems. They were obvious to me, but I was seeing things. Well, of course I was seeing things. But I was the one who was biased. Not the device. It wasn't the device's problem. It was clearly an operator error. No, Android just wasn't good. It started to get good from my perspective, where I sit, maybe a couple of years ago. Unlike that light bulb. There's a light bulb in my office that keeps going off and on. I've got 4 of them. There are 4 lights! And 3 of them seem to be working. I need to get a bulb replacement. So you have to pardon. It's not working very well. It's probably thinking I'm biased, for talking about this again. I'm not trying to reopen old wounds, but I do want to talk about my first Android device, my first experience with Android. If only because I know you've probably had your own experiences with Android, or more than anything, now may be a good time to have your first Android experience. It doesn't have to be with the LG V30. It doesn't have to be with a Google Pixel phone. It doesn't have to be one thing or another. I know what I prefer. I know what I like, and that is what brings me back to my first Android device. Did you notice the light changed in here? Possibly because the bulb came back on? It's on the fritz, whatever that means. I know that if what I see today from Android would have been produced back then on the alleged iPhone killer, I would have absolutely had a different perspective. It wasn't about being an apologist for one platform or another, which many of you, by the way, are inclined to do. If I didn't mention that this video was being recorded on an LG V30, some people would say, oh, the video quality's horrible. It obviously uses the iPhone to record video. Blah, blah, blah. But then as soon as I say it up front, oh, the LG V30 is amazing and all the other cameras suck. It's tribalism. I'm not interested at all. I want a good experience. And what it boiled down to for me, back with the HTC Evo 4G, was a solid software experience. It was not a solid software experience. Android has not been a solid software experience pretty much until recently. From my perspective, from where I sit, if you could get along with it, if you were fine with it, hey, that's awesome. I don't have your eyes. I'll never have your eyes. I have my eyes. I have my feelings. I have my perspectives. I have my opinions. You have your own. So if your first Android experience turns you off to the world of Android, maybe you need to try a different type of Android experience, because that's the thing. Each Android product comes with a different camera, or a camera that's the same, but it is modified in different ways in software. Every single Android device out there is different by its very nature. It's like the diametrical opposite of what an iPhone is. You get an iPhone here, and it's like an iPhone there, and it's like an iPhone there. That's not how it works with Android. I mean, this is, some would argue, a strength, but that could also be a drawback. It's not about which one is better. I just know that Android has progressed a long way from where I saw it in the very beginning, being wholly unimpressed, always hoping that it would get better. Over the years, I found that some of my most favorites or favored experiences in the Android world specifically came from Google. There were modifications, but they weren't heavy modifications. I loved my Nexus 4. I really liked, I think it was my Nexus 5X. I've been using my Nexus 6P for a while, and this week, Pixel Week, I should be getting my Pixel 2. It's my intention to give it a fair shake, but of course, if it doesn't really meet expectations, which are kind of in the middle right now, I don't have high expectations for it. I just want it to be a good experience. That's all I expect it to be. It may end up changing my mind indefinitely in terms of how I view Android or how I accommodate it, in my life. It doesn't mean I'm embracing it and abandoning the past. It's just a device, people. It's going to change. One thing that didn't change was my experience in the past. One thing that hasn't changed is how I perceive these types of experiences. They tend to be from a similar rubric in terms of an approach. It's not about which company makes it. It's just looking for a device that is stellar, not just for its hardware, but its hardware in conjunction with its software. These are invisible things as I'm referring to them in the air. What was your first Android experience? What was your first Android device? Do you still have your first Android device? I'd be curious. I know I don't. I don't think I just chucked it across the lawn or anything, but that was not a device worth keeping even when it was brand new. Some would argue. Some of you love that device. I was not one of them at all. But if that type of experience is the type of experience you had on your first Android device, you may owe it to yourself to take a look. And, there are many compelling options, out there for you. If you tend to agree with many of the things that I say, you may want to follow the same path that I'm following. And you've got to stay tuned to follow the path that I'm following there. I'm trying to do a live video every day, although I don't know if that's going to happen today with this light going on and off. That's just going to drive me nuts. I know I shouldn't talk about it, but I need to talk about it because I'm fixating on it. YouTube.com/LockerGnome. Subscribe there, turn on notifications whenever the next live video is going to be. I don't know. Of course, you could head over to twitch.tv/Chris Pirillo and sub to me on Twitch, or patreon.com/Chris Pirillo to become a patron of mine. And either way, you would get access to the Discord chat room 24/7. Even when I'm not doing a live video, you can hang out with me in the chat room, which is pretty amazing thing. I am currently trying to do the whole crowdfunding idea thing around the idea of picking up new devices to review for you if I'm not able to get a review unit like this one that I recently got. So take a look at the video description if you want a link to the current crowdfunding campaigns on those. But yeah, I wanted to talk about this. I threw the topic out to the chat room, to the Discord chat, to my Twitch subs and the patrons in the chat room, and I said, well, actually, I think it was Liz who proposed a list of topics, and the people who were active in chat said, hey, yeah, talk about this. So that was my first Android device. What about yours? Even if you haven't had one, you should have one. It sounded a little weird. I'm weird. I love you. I appreciate you. And at this point, I'm going to leave you to your own devices. May the Force be with you.